All right, everybody. We'll get started with today's session. Thanks so much for joining early in World Water Week on a Sunday afternoon. Today, we're going to be speaking about rural water innovation from concept to scale up. So we're going to be covering a lot of different technical and financial innovations during this session through our discussions with the two different panels that I noted. But we thought a lot about what we could give as an example for innovation that has already had a big impact on rural water development. And it was hard not to eventually go to hand pumps. Now, hand pumps have been with us for so long that we may not really recognize both the value that they have brought to rural water service delivery, as well as the lessons that hand pumps, both in their scale up and in the challenges that they have faced, bring to new innovations. So to remind us of what we can learn from hand pumps, we have very fortunately Sean Fury, the director of the Rural Water Supply Network Secretariat, to give us a 10-minute primer. Sean?
Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Renju, for the introduction. So let's just check that that's working. So in the next 10 minutes, I was asked to give a presentation on hand pump history in 10 minutes. I was like, sorry, did I hear you? Did you say 10 minutes? 10 hours, surely? No, okay. So I will try and be concise. So what we're going to start with is the fact that, as Ranjiv points out, this is in some ways a very ancient technology. Just about every civilization that we know of has invented some kind of water lifting device. So why is this a good story? Well, first of all, for a long time, for many centuries, the default in many societies was a hand pump made out of cast irons, either some form of suction or piston pump. And that really changed in the 1970s. And that's the story I want to tell briefly today. And then that carried on into the 1980s with the World Bank hand pump project that led to the publication that you can see on the screen, which is Community Water Supply, the hand pump option, which remains a central text, as it were, for rural water supply. Whenever I get someone call me up and say, I've invented a new type of hand pump, I point them to this document and say, read that and come back to me if you've invented something new. I never hear from them again, except for Design Outreach, an honorable mention to Design Outreach, who really did come up with something new. And then in parallel to that, there was the AfriDev that was developed at the same time to be a more easily repairable pump. And then more recently, in the last couple of decades, it led to standardization led by our network. So the story of the India Mark II goes back to 1967, when there was a drought in India, in Bihar, and the government of India and the state government invited UNICEF in, or asked for UNICEF's help. So UNICEF came in and they drilled thousands of boreholes across the state to get people access to water. But a couple of years later, when they went back to see the results of that, they found that shockingly about 3/4 of the cast iron hand pumps that they'd installed were broken and just not working. So they started looking around for solutions. And at that time, there was a gentleman called Oscar Carlson, who'd been working in India in a local workshop with a local NGO, who'd been working on developing an all-steel hand pump. And UNICEF got wind of this and collaborated with him and his team, and they bought several thousand of these and they tested them. And they convened a collaboration between the government of India, a manufacturing company called Richard and Cruddas, an NGO, and together they refined the design. They went to Tamil Nadu, they tested this refined design with a few more thousand pumps. And then that was successful enough that then the government of India convened a national workshop in the late 70s to develop a standard. And that was then taken up by the Bureau of Indian Standards and has been revised ever since, initially just through the 80s, but even today Bureau of Indian Standards are updating that. Also in the 80s, a variant was created, the India Mark III, but to make it more easily repairable at the village level, so you didn't need specialist tools or training. And then in the legacy of the hand pump project of the 1980s was the hand pump technology network, which was effectively kind of a World Bank UNICEF technical working group on the technology. And that's what evolved in the mid-2000s into the rural water supply network that we have today with over 15,000 members. And really the last step, modern step, is in 2007, the most recent revision of the international public domain standards was published. So what can we learn from this? I mean, there are three kind of stages. There's the development, there's the scaling up, and then there's the long-term support, but also the end of life of technology to consider. So these things are really, think about these when we're talking about other examples. So first of all, I think in the development, a key part of this was the strength of the collaboration of a diverse partnership between an international organization, government, private sector, working together. They knew their roles, they collaborated, and with well-defined objectives. And in the scaling up, that was really supported by government adoption of the standards, inclusion in programs, both government programs and donor programs, not just in India, but elsewhere. So we saw the likes of the UK, the CEDA, DANIDA, others incorporating this pump in their programming. And strong private sector capacity in India to meet that demand. And having an open standard allowed many entrants to the market while getting the interchangeability of parts. Now, there's been a long debate, particularly in the HTN years, about whether a public domain standard or a proprietary standard is the best way to go. Long term, though, I would say that the issues around supply chains are absolutely critical to the sustainability of any technology, and how keeping that affordable. The continuous commitment to quality control is absolutely essential, and that the after-sales service and the whole management piece around it is critical to ensure that there are the right support and incentives to deliver a quality product. And that when eventually a better technology comes along, that there is thoughtful means of transitioning. So if we're transitioning from a hand pump to household water connections, what about those that are going to be left behind, such as nomadic and pastoralists that don't have houses that you can have a household pipe water connection to? So that's something to consider. But in reality, what we see is that hand pumps are still relevant today. We estimate in a recent study that over 200 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone, and there are many millions more across Asia and elsewhere, are still reliant on the technology. And that's around 700,000 hand pumps estimated. We don't have firm figures. So finally, kind of looking ahead, we did a survey of our members about what they saw as the future, and clearly you can see from this graph that they saw that solar pumping is the technology of the future in terms of pumping. But I think I also want to draw your attention to the fact that over half the respondents said that in 5 years' time they still see hand pumps as an important technology. So there is an important legacy effect of implication of caring for this, because there are issues that have emerged, such as corrosion, such as lead, that need to be tackled because they are a public health and sustainability issue. So that's it. If you want to, that's a very quick overview of a very deep story. We have a lot of lots of great documentation on our website, from rope pumps in Nicaragua to various other great stories and guidance and all the rest of it on our website. But I'll leave it there. So thank you very much.